All right, so what we're doing here is we've done a bunch of dent work and straightening these slides, and now we've got it on a leveling stone. It's on rails. We've got these weighted blocks here to hold things down onto the rails and keep these all flat. This is part of what we call a slide spell, meaning straight, parallel, and level. And so we're putting this outer slide assembly together. These are really kind of tricky slides because they're very soft. So I've got the crook down here, trying to make sure that we have everything in reasonable order. So we're just going to try and match everything and get it all properly aligned within 1/1000th. We're 0, or 001, and then this is 000. So what we'll do then now is we'll solder one side, the side on the pins. This is fixed. So we'll solder this. We refer to that as making a candy cane. And then this is the entire outer side, which can swing, called a gate. This is the hinge at this point, which is one of our last solders. And then the cross brace, we have the socket there, and that's the latch for the gate. So this has been all mounted up. We're ready to solder the crook. Every time we solder things, we let everything cool down, and then we double check our measurements because everything here is soft and it's easy for it to deform just from the heat. We don't use excessive heat, only enough to get the solder to flow, and we do our best to do as clean a solder as possible. We don't want to have to go in and do a whole lot of cleanup on this when it's all said and done. We're just putting this into good working order. Once this is done, we'll fit the inside slides. We'll flip this around. We'll put the inside slides in. We will separate the solder joint at this socket, clean it out so it's nice and smooth and slippery, and then we'll put that in, and we'll very carefully solder this joint so that all of this inside jazz here will interface with the outer. And once all this is cool, taking into account the expansion contraction, again, don't overheat things. More heat means more expansion and more contraction. So we try to just warm this up enough so we can get the solder to flow completely, and then clean up afterwards. That is more or less what we're doing here, and I hope it makes some sense to you. And draw our solder around, make sure we got a good joint there. Okay. So now we've created what we refer to as the candy cane. So it's not connected at this joint, and it's not connected at that solder, at that brace there. This is all swinging now. So we cool all that off and give it a minute. Make sure it gets down to room temperature. And we use these weighted blocks here. Those are to hold everything down and keep things from shifting around if we don't want them to. Okay, so now we'll take our calipers. We'll double check because things have a way of moving. Now we also want to make sure that we're really careful with the crook because we don't want it sagging. You know, don't want it bending weird. That would just be weird. So now I'm going to come in and I'm going to double check my measurements here. And that's still looking pretty good. We're going to come up here and we're going to solder the cross brace. Again, being restrained. Don't get it too crazy with the heat. It's not necessary. So we'll warm things up here. There are some times where you can use, cold pack or, wetted towels and things like that to keep your heat from getting away from you, because you really don't want to overdo it here. Okay, this is always the tricky part here. You go to solder this because you have a tube heating up inside of a telescopic situation. This expands, and then everything cools down and it can shrink. So we have a situation here where I'll come in and I'll double check and see how much my expansion and contraction is. Okay, so we're back to 1/1000, 0. So now And come back here, check again. Don't be in too big a hurry to start adjusting things, because these things do shrink and they expand and contract. Okay, so now we've got -2. So what I can do is, because this is a ever so slightly barreled in the middle, I can actually give that a tweak and see if that helps us any. So now we're going to lock the hinge by soldering this point here. We'll just wipe off the excess. Zero, zero, zero. Okay, so we'll just come in here and see what we got going on. Okay. That's half a thou there. And 2.5 thou there. That's a bummer, but not a deal breaker in this instance. That's like a hair. Okay. But we're also dealing with areas that are, the wall thickness is a little bit thicker up here too, because the ends here did have some work done to them. And try to anticipate that. When you work on these, especially at the ends where these have been damaged and dented, you're doing all that burnishing and everything, you are going to thin the walls a little bit. So keep in mind that there can be that little discrepancy. So we don't, when we're making these measurements, they can be a little bit off. And a thou, it doesn't take much, you know, to throw things off. So we'll just come back here, double check our measurements.
Do you also make mistakes?
Yeah. So people think, you know, it's like, oh yeah, that Dan Overlaw, he doesn't make any mistakes. Does it all the time. Okay.
If you make mistakes, imagine myself.
Should have seen the valve stems I did the other day. Cracked them all, and I had to completely remake the whole set.
Imagine myself. I made more mistakes, huh?
Well, you're allowed. We're all allowed. Just try to keep it to a minimum. All right, let's see where we're at here this time. Yep, half a thou.
Pretty close.
Moved half a thou. That's pretty good. Boy, -2. Keep in mind, wall thickness up here is it's much thicker. So if we have a couple thou off divided by 2 slides, that's nothing. So we're okay. All right, now what we're gonna do is move on to the inside slide. Let's just kind of see if we're lucky. Probably not. We'll just go ahead and see if we can slide this in there and what kind of results we get, okay? So here we go. End tubes match up pretty good, but look at the ends here, and I can see this is a little pushed out. It's a little narrower here than on this side. I don't know if you can voice the camera down here, but you can see how it's tighter on this side than this side. And the same here. See that gap there is smaller than on the inside. So this is actually a little bit wider. So we're going to take this apart at one point, and we're going to slide this all in, and we're going to resolder it. But before we do that, we're going to do one other thing here. This is what I was telling you about earlier, Ruben, when we were discussing this. So we check one tube at a time. Because sometimes these tubes, they can have some funny stuff with them. That's pretty good. I'll check the other end. Make sure we don't have any real draggy spots. This definitely needs to have the corks replaced up in the top.
Yep.
And we might have to do a little bit of re-rounding up here at the top as well, because it looks like there's some, there might be a little bit of binding with this being bent, this lock ring that's on here. It's pretty thin, and I think it's kind of dragging on the side. But definitely we got cork up in here and it's kind of grabbing hold of everything. So we're gonna just take this, set this over here. Like I was telling you, Ruben, you don't have to go at these things with a blowtorch. Just warm them up and relax when you're doing this sort of thing. You're always going to have some degree of scorching with this old lacquer. Some lacquers just burn like it's their job. Okay, so there we go. Got that taken care of. I'm going to clean off that excess solder. You can see that it's rounded, it's not square. We don't like to use the square one because when you're getting into things, those square edges can cut through the brass in areas that you really don't want it to do, like a modern day trombone crook, hand slide crook for a king that has the ferrule extruded on the ends. You go in with one of these that's got a square corner on it, it'll cut through the corner of the ferrule and kind of wreck the whole crook. So a rounded nose will not do that. It's like the edges of brace flanges. Just go on them and square them up. Gives you clean metal. It's going to help the solder through capillary action get pulled from out here inside. When you're dealing with these old slides, especially one that has inside tubes that are compromised, you got to kind of look at things and see what we got going on here. If there's anything really standing out that's kind of a mess. And yeah, these are nickel plated tubes that are 70 plus years old. So they're not looking their best. Again, so we have to just kind of work with what we got. These are dual bore tubes, which is hopefully going to make this horn, I don't know, like better than average. That'd be nice. We don't know. Don't get things, I don't have this blasting hot, okay? So I'm just drawing the solder in. Try not to draw too much in, or if you got a bad fit, if you pull too much in, it'll create a bead on the inside and that'll fall off, and then you'll have a rattler in there, and then you gotta take it all apart and redo it. And less time for that. Okay, one of the issues that we run into now and then with some of these older slides is just the way that these sockets are all soldered together and hard soldered. And when you get a slide that's been bent or deformed, sometimes the damage or the bending that happens here will telegraph into the sleeve, and that will manifest itself inside there. Well, you can't reach that really with a mandrel unless you take all this stuff apart, and sometimes you can't take that apart. So in this instance, on a rare occasion, I will use the hone, and hopefully I'll say my prayers and I have a mandrel that works with a stone and all. And so in this instance, I have one. And so what I'm doing is I'm just honing these upper areas here. Everything seemed fine until we put it together. We have just this eensy teensy bit of drag that I don't like, and everything else is pretty straight. So usually that tells me that there's something going on in here. So I'm going to now just I'm going to lightly hone just around this upper section here, enough to where it'll help us. Sometimes, well, you just run into issues and you have to kind of work around them. That's a bit bigger. A little bit more. So now we've honed these up in the area here where the sleeves are, and hopefully this will alleviate some of the teeny bit of drag that was bothering me. We'll see. But I'm going to clean this up now, and then we'll take a calipers back to this and see if there's any distortion in here. Hopefully not. If anything, it might widen it because we had that 2.5 thousandths discrepancy. Actually, it was a 2 thousandths discrepancy that was in here. A little bit of run out, but we've got that. Like I said, that should absorb into just the typical play that's in here. But if we have any damage in here and it opened this up a little bit, it's just a tiny little bit. So, okay, I'm going to go clean this up and we'll see where we're at. Okay, this is not horrible now. It's not ideal, but this is one of those kind of horns that you don't want to spend a lot of time and money on. I mean, if it's not functional, it's no good at all, but we got it to where, you know, it's a heavy, funky old slide from the late 40s, early 50s maybe, and it's just, the plating is failing on the inside tubes. The customer doesn't want to spend money having it replated or anything like that. Probably would be very troublesome if you tried to strip it, because you'd find out that there's likely dezinkification in the substrate, and when you have that, then you have another whole area of problems that you're going to have to work with. But, you know, it's okay. It's smooth. You know, it's just, you can tell that the tubes on this are not drawn very well. But what are you going to do? Anyway, we'll slap a water key on this thing and pretty much call it done.
It's good to go.
Yeah, will do.